In this session, we will discuss about asynchronous transfer mode in distributed systems. We have too many networks in telecommunication. We have networks for telephony, networks for data, networks for PAN, LAN, MAN and WAN, corporate networks, packet switch networks, cable TV networks, mobile communication networks, wired and wireless networks. Now have a look at this table and look at the conflicting service requirements. There are no two networks which have the same requirements or the same specification. So what do we need? What is our requirement right now? We require a network which can accommodate a mix of voice, data, and video services simultaneously, which must be simple and provide network transparency. It should also support desktop to desktop connection, phone to phone connection, so basically replacing today's multiple platform. Simultaneously, it must be scalable and flexible and support all speeds, all distances, all delays and jitters. So the question arises, do we really have such a flexible and friendly technology? Is there any solution to this problem? Yes. We make use of a network called as asynchronous transfer mode or ATM. Let's have a look at the brief history of ATM. ATM was developed between the years 1970s to 1980s. ATM is a telecommunication network defined by ANSI and ITU committees for the transport of a broad range of user information. So what is ATM? ATM is a high performance technology which uses cell switching and is connection oriented. ATM is multiplexing technology that utilizes fixed length packets to carry different types of packets. Let's have a look at the advantages of ATM. ATM is good for multiplexing. It is independent of the physical layer and asynchronous in nature. It is flexible in bandwidth allocation. ATM delivers a bandwidth on demand and is not dependent on applications. It works at a data rate of 1.5 megabits per second to 2 gigabits per second. It is good for switching and uses fixed size cell units. It provides routing and control information in each cell. It has low processing overhead. A much wider array of information can be transmitted using ATM technology. For example, it can transmit voice, data, images, MRI images, and also supports video conferencing. It also supports all types of networking from LANs to WANs. Data is transmitted over virtual circuits. It accepts variety of transmission media such as optical fiber or twisted pair cable, and also supports protocols such as TCP and IP. Now let's have a look at the cell structure in ATM. The ATM architecture has a fixed length cell. An ATM cell is a short fixed length block of data that contains a short header with addressing information followed by the payload. The cell structure is shown in the figure. It is a 53 bytes long cell with 5 byte header and 48 bytes of payload. The short packet in a way may appear to be somewhat inefficient in its ratio of overhead to actual data, but it does have some distinct advantages over the alternatives. By fixing the length of each cell, the timing characteristics such as propagation delay of the links and the corresponding networks are predictable. If the packets were of variable length, then predicting the performance dynamics is very difficult. By using short fixed length cells, hardware design becomes much more easier. Finally, the use of a short cell provides an ability to transmit asynchronous information with short delay. Now let's discuss about the header. The information contained in the header of each cell is as follows. It is used to identify the circuit of the local link. It carries local flow control information and includes error detection. It prevents cell from being misrouted. So the question arises, why fixed length cell? The answer is as follows. By fixing the length of each cell, the timing characteristics such as propagation delay of the links and the corresponding networks are predictable. If the packets are of variable length, then predicting the performance dynamics is very difficult. By using fixed length cells, hardware design becomes easy. Short cells provide the ability to transfer asynchronous information with a short delay. ATM basically uses two types of network interfaces. The first network interface is called as UNI network interface. UNI stands for User to Network Interface Signaling. Now here we have two end station A and end station B, and this is the network. Now a connection between end station to an ATM switch is called as UNI signaling. The second type of interface is NNI, that is network to network interface signaling. Now the connection between different ATM switches is called as network to network interface signaling. We will be discussing about the UNI signaling. What are the header contents with respect to UNI signal? We have something called as GFC, which is of 4 bits. GFC stands for Generic Flow Control and can be used to provide local functions such as identifying multiple stations or sharing a single ATM interface. Next is VPI, which is of 8 bits. VPI stands for Virtual Path Identifier. It is a 8-bit field which is used to identify the next destination of a cell as it passes through a series of ATM switches. A virtual path consists of multiple virtual channels to the same endpoint. Next is VCI, which is of 16 bits. VCI stands for Virtual Channel Identifier. It is a 16-bit field. With VPI, it is used to identify the next destination of a cell as it passes through a series of ATM switches. PTI, which is of 3 bits. PTI indicates the payload type. It is a 3-bit field. The first bit indicates whether the payload is data or control data. The second bit indicates congestion. The third bit indicates whether the cell is the last cell in the series. CLP, that is congestion loss priority, which is 1 bit. It indicates whether a cell should be discarded if it encounters extreme congestion as it moves through the network. And finally we have HEC, that is header error control, which detects all single error with certain multiple bit errors. We need to know some terms. Now, what is a virtual channel? ATM basically makes use of a virtual channel. A connection between two endpoints of a network which helps in transport of ATM cells and associated by a common virtual channel identifier. The virtual channel identifier is used in conjunction with VPI to identify the next destination of a cell as it passes through a series of switch router on its way to destination. So what is this virtual path? A virtual path is used to carry one or more virtual channels through the network. It is represented as a bundle or collection of channels between two endpoints. Virtual path identifier identifies a unidirectional transport of ATM cells belonging of virtual channels. VPI is used in conjunction with VCI, a virtual path which consists of multiple virtual channels to the same endpoint. Now let's look how switching is carried out in ATM. Look at the virtual connection which has been established on dynamic basis between end user A and end user C through the switches SW1 and SW2 and SW3. PCA to SW1 and PCC to SW3 are UNI signaling. That means they are making use of user to network interface signaling, and this also makes use of user to network interface signaling. SW2 and SW3 are making use of NNI, that is network to network interface signaling, and SW2 to SW3 also makes use of NNI signaling. The data from PCA with VPI VCI 29 of switch 1 is eventually transmitted to C through VPI VCI 43 of switch 3 over the network established link. When a cell arrives, its VPI VCI are examined. Based on this and information stored in the switch, when the virtual circuit was established, the cell is routed to the correct output port. Now in this example, some data has to be transmitted from PC A to PC C in an ATM network. The ATM switches, that is SW1, SW2, SW3, have their routing tables. The data is transmitted from PC A to switch A using UNI signaling, followed by NNI signaling in between. The data sent from PCA to the first switch is accepted on port 1 of switch 1 through the VPI VCI identifier 29. Now, the switch 1 checks its routing table and tries to find out on which port it can further transmit this data. So on checking its routing table, it forwards the packet through port 3, and through virtual channel interface ID 45 it forwards the packet. As it moves on to the switch 2, at switch 2 it checks the input port to be 1 and the virtual channel identifier to be 45. The output for this switch is on port 2 with the channel identifier as 16. As it moves towards switch 3, the input port of switch 3 is port 1 and the channel identifier is 16, whereas the output port for switch 3 is port 2 and the channel identifier is 43, moving towards PC C. Now in this case, if two cells arrive at the same time on different input lines and need to go to the same output port, then it randomly picks one and forwards it. If two ports each have streams of cells to the same destination, then input queues will be formed, blocking other cells behind them that want to go to the output port that are free. And this problem is called as head of line blocking.